it's an enormous gift and an enormous responsibility to have twins, which is absolutely a blessing. But I was still holding on to what I thought I was promised, and that was a hard thing to get over and to expect something different and the complications that come with twins. I thought, have I been granted 2 because only one of them's gonna make it out? Am I gonna lose both of them? And so that was a really rough road.
Hello, and welcome to the Twin Mom Life Podcast. I'm your host, Jess. I created this podcast to help build community, connection, and most importantly, friendships among moms of multiples. Being a twin mom can be amazing and magical. That twin bond is unlike anything I've ever witnessed. But it can also be isolating and overwhelming. I'll be chatting with other twin moms, diving deep into the twin experience, giving advice on what works for us so you don't have to learn the hard way. Juggling 2 babies at the same time is challenging, but I'm confident we can learn from each other and figure out how to raise these babies together. Hey, welcome to the podcast. Today we have Tabitha. How are you?
I'm feeling truly blessed to be on this, so thank you so much for having me.
Oh, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm Canadian. My name is Tabitha. I'm a mother of 4 children, 3 living, 3 under 3. We were 3 under 2 for a little bit there. I had an angel baby singleton as my first, and then I was blessed with twins, twin boys, and then shortly after that, another daughter.
And that's actually how we connected. So it's a sad way to connect, but I also had 2 losses before my daughter, and that kicked off a podcast for you. Can you tell us about your podcast?
Sure. So, Miscarriages and Milestones is a podcast that honors the loss of the babies that have touched our lives, but then also addresses the milestones that we've had since. Motherhood is something that undoubtedly is going to shape a person, whether or not we have living children in our arms after the fact, or whether or not, unfortunately, we had to let go before we got to see our babies or interact with our babies. And so, hopefully, the podcast creates space for women to share those stories, the milestones that come after, and is really an opportunity to celebrate that wonderful impact or bittersweet impact that baby had and how they've changed us.
And I just think that's so beautiful, and I don't know if you know this or if I've shared this on this podcast, but I had my first miscarriage almost 8 years ago now, and I was craving connection with other women who had also experienced loss, and I found a podcast. It's no longer recording it, I'm sure there are old episodes available, but it's called Life After Miscarriage,
Mhm.
and it was a similar premise where she was interviewing women on their loss and their stories, and oh my goodness, it's honestly what got me through that really difficult time in my life, and it's what motivated me one of the motivations to start my own podcast. So I think what you're doing is really beautiful and definitely so important. So thank you for what you're doing because it is a topic that a lot of women don't talk about. I was so shocked once I shared publicly my losses, how many other women around me shared that they had also had losses that I never knew about. Like, why aren't
Mm.
we talking about this? So just think it's so great.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
And I know we're already diving in, but before we do, I would love to know what you did today to fill your own cup.
For me, it's blogging. I am so consumed with all that is needed to look after my 3 children, look after my house. I also have a very busy mind, and there's so often times that I want to express myself and get trains of thought down on paper, but I'm a little exhausted from all the talking and all the interactions that come with twins. There's a lot of questions and a lot of answering those questions and a lot of conversations. And so I want to express myself, but not necessarily with my words. And so being able to blog, I blog on Montessori with multiples, and I have so much behind the scenes that hasn't even been published yet and might not end up getting published in the end, but just being able to get that out has been a wonderful way for me to fill my cup.
That's so great. And I would love to talk to you about that too. I know there are a lot of things that don't fit into the twin world. And I know you had mentioned that Montessori was one of them, like not really having any resources for that. So I'd love to talk about that. I'm trying to think what I did today to fill my cup. Okay, so my daughter is in kindergarten and my boys are in a very minimal Mother's Day Out program. It's 6 hours a week. So I try to shove a lot of things in those 6 hours. And today I actually had nothing scheduled. I was like, this has never happened in my whole life. So I sat and I watched TV for 30 minutes. I finished Age of Attraction. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen I'm kind of stuck in the early 2000s, 90s, that's my media consumption right now. We're watching
That's great.
Smallville, we're watching
Oh,
Star
nice.
Trek,
Oh,
that's where
fun.
I'm at in the world right now.
That's great. I love that. Well, I started the episode last night and I was so tired I could not finish it. And I don't ever watch TV during the day. And while I
Mhm.
had my lunch, I thought, I'm dying to know what happens. So I finished the episode, enjoyed my lunch, and then one thing that's definitely lacking in our home right now with trying to do the podcast with minimal childcare is keeping up with the house, like the cleaning, things like that. So I
Mhm.
spent the rest of the time cleaning and it felt so good and productive. So that was kind of a way I filled my cup today in a way that I don't normally do. So that was fun.
Well, that sounds so harmonious to have some
Thanks.
gluttony in there to enjoy, but then some good elbow grease, that sounds like a perfect
Yes.
day.
Yeah, it was a good combo. I kinda felt guilty when I was, like, sitting on the couch. I'm like, "Am I allowed to do this? Like, am I allowed to watch TV at 11 AM? This is crazy." So, that was, quite a treat, and not the typical thing I do while my boys are at their program,
Mhm.
so that was very fun. Well, before I learn more about Montessori with multiples, I'd love to know about your twins.
Sure. Part of what I do in my blogging is that I refer to them as baby B and baby S, and my living daughter, baby E. I don't share their names or their faces. All my photos have them with their faces obscured, and I don't have any personal social media, so I don't share any of that. I'm really protective of their digital footprint when it comes to that, but I love
Mhm,
sharing experiences that I have with them. So my boys are very outgoing, high strung, lots of energy, very independent. Some of that I wonder is from what I've fostered with Montessori and how much that would have come out naturally.
mhm.
And they are super helpful, super loving, super curious little boys who love their baby sister. And I was curious what it would look like to add another one to the mix. I have to say I am grateful that I got another baby girl so that a boy wouldn't feel left out of the twin dynamic.
Mhm.
But they are thick as thieves. They love being together. And so far, they're only 3 years old, but so far it's a good run with all 3 of them getting along.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, we have, like, the same genders but opposite setup. So my
Yes, we
daughter
did.
is yeah, my daughter's 6, and man, the transition in the beginning was very difficult. She was 3, and she was like, "What are they doing here? I'm an only child." And now they are just so close and play so well, the majority of the time, of course. They
Mhm.
have their sibling squabbles, but it's so fun to see their relationship, and just can't imagine not having all 3 of them. So, how did your boys do when your daughter was born?
They were fascinated. We have a wonderful home video of them squealing with delight as she came home in her car seat, just yelling, "Baby, baby, baby," over and over
Oh,
again.
that's so cute.
They're super helpful. We did let them know baby was coming. We set up the environment to be accommodating for them and that they would know where everything was located. So if I asked, "Can you go get a spit up cloth for mommy?" or "This needs to go here or there," they would have the language for that and they would know where to find it. And they've been very helpful and very willing. One of the sweetest things is when my little girl would cry and they would point at my breasts and say, "Baby's hungry," and maybe even lift up my shirt to help and try to point me in the direction that this is what she needs.
That's cute. They're like, "Come on, mom, feed the baby." That's very, very cute. And, okay, I don't know if I've really gotten into this on the podcast, but having twins first and then a singleton. Were you
Mhm.
like, "This is so easy"?
Very much so, and I will die on the hill that newborn twins are so much harder than toddler twins with a newborn, I swear.
Mm.
It felt like life on hard mode and that you were constantly going, and when I had my singleton and I had moments where it was just me and her, I thought, "Wow, this is too easy." Just because you had experienced the opposite, and it was not a common decision. Most people, when they get twins, they're like, they're done. It's not very common to have more kids after that, from what I've found.
Yeah, I think if we had twins first, that we would have been done because we used to always say, "For sure 1, maybe 2, never 3."
Mhm.
So, man, twins first, I mean, who knows what would have happened, but I would assume that we would have been done after that. So I'm so thankful it happened the opposite way because
Mm.
we needed all of these babies in our lives. So, yeah, that's interesting. Have you heard of that, like, mom math when you have multiples, as in, like, 3 plus, that when you go out with just 1, it feels like you have no kids?
Yes, no, definitely. I've thought of that, how I must look to other people, not that anybody cares, but when I have just the one child, usually one of the twins with the baby, I feel like there's a part that's missing that should be right here. I've had moments of panic of like, "Where's the other one?"
Mm.
Sometimes because it's
Mhm.
just so expected or a phantom limb that should be there, and so it does feel incomplete, it does feel odd. We tend to be quite the circus when it's all of us with 2 different
Same.
grocery carts and loaded up, and we get so much attention, everybody commenting, "You must be busy," and "Are they twins?" and this and that, and then just to feel like, one of them's looking around wondering where did all the attention go because suddenly they're not getting it when they're not a twin or it's not all 3 of us.
Sure. Well, and I don't think I've asked this question in a while, but what's the oddest or, like, most unhinged comment you've received as a twin mom?
Hmm. Well, I will say this is I don't know, specifically as a twin mom, but the most recent thing that happened was, we went out to a restaurant to honor my, angel baby's 4th birthday, and with twins, everybody's in the car seats, and we have 3 under 3, and you don't put children in their car seats with their jackets, and so you strip them out, and so it was also we're gonna go into the restaurant, and that's just another thing to be whipped around, and it was just nonsense, we were right at the door, so I thought, "We'll just go in, no point in bringing the coats, they're in the car." Well, we go in and this grandmother makes conversation with my child saying, "Where is your coat?" And he said, "It's in the car." And she said, "Oh, that's a great place for it to be. You'll catch your death." And I thought, "Well,
Oh my.
one down, 3 to go, I guess, because I'm here for my daughter's 4th anniversary of her death. Thank you very much, and off
Oh
to dinner we went."
gosh. Like, if only she knew how much her foot was in her mouth.
I know.
Oh, that's terrible.
I'm you know what? I had a quiet conversation with my angel baby. I'm sure she would have been, as much dark humor as I am, and I just thought it was kind of funny and thought I would just keep that to ourselves, and off to the table we went.
Well, and sometimes that's like,
Mm.
a way to cope.
Mm.
Embrace the dark humor, you know?
But if it was a singleton, maybe I would have put on a jacket every single time, but with the twins and 2 of them and 2 jackets and more things to take up the table, it was just too much.
Sure. Yeah, oh, yeah, I feel like we would have done the same thing, like, it's a hop, skip, and a jump into the restaurant, everyone will be fine for 30 seconds without a coat. Yeah, I feel like I would have done the same thing. That reminds me of, like, the whole sentiment of the older generations, like, "Where's your socks? You have to have socks on or you'll catch a cold," you know?
Oh, we get stopped all the time in the grocery store for them not wearing socks because when they were younger, they would just pull them off, and,
Sure.
I've caught so many people as I turn to grab yogurt to open the fridge and grab yogurt to throw it in my cart, and I turn around and somebody's holding their toes, commenting while touching my children, while asking if they're twins and where are their socks.
Oh my gosh. No boundaries. Oh, man. Okay, so I'd love to talk about Montessori. So
Sure.
what initially interested you in Montessori education?
So let's see if I can boil this down. I'm a bit of a planner, and I was expecting my daughter and getting ready and nesting. And I'll say that when I found out I was pregnant with her, I ran out and bought a crib like 2 weeks later. I was so, not even 2 weeks later, I was so excited. And I started preparing for what that would mean. And I knew that motherhood and having a child was going to change everything and that I wanted to be as prepared as possible. And I started looking into Montessori. Inadvertently, there were a lot of components of it that I found really attractive, things that we already valued. And in exploring that, I was reading some books, watching some seminars on YouTube, joined a couple of those paid programs where you get to talk to a Montessorian. And then I found out about halfway through my pregnancy that she had passed away.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that was tough, and so then I became pregnant about 2.5 months later, and I was still going through postpartum with some postpartum depression, and it was halfway through that pregnancy that I found out it was twins. So you go to one anatomy scan and you find out there is no heartbeat, and then you go to the next anatomy scan and you find out there are 2 heartbeats. So
I I can't even imagine that. I'm like, we could even have like a pause here and just talk about that. Like,
Sure.
I can't imagine, I don't know, like the alterations in your brain chemistry of like how you process that going from a loss and a late term loss.
Mhm.
I mean, my losses were unbelievably difficult, but they were early. I didn't know the genders. I was around 6 or 7 weeks with the losses, so it was earlier, and I think that is different. I had bought onesies and things like that, but I wasn't, like, setting up a nursery. Like I said, I didn't know the gender, we didn't have names. Those things really bond you with your baby more. So, I mean, I would love to pause and take a minute to talk about that, and then how it felt and how you processed then being pregnant with 2.
So I'll say there was a blessing that I found out halfway through because vanishing twin syndrome is a thing. For all I know, I had triplets. For all I know, there were 4. So to not know could be a
Mhm.
blessing. There was some gender disappointment in the shock of it all because I was expecting a girl, and then now I had 2 boys, and it was an enormous gift and an enormous responsibility to have twins, which is absolutely a blessing. But I was still holding on to what I thought I was promised, and that was a hard thing to get over and to expect something different, and the complications that come with twins. I thought, "Have I been granted 2 because only one of them's gonna make it out? Am I gonna lose
Mm.
both of them?" And so that was a really rough road. I had some complications. I had gestational diabetes, lots of edema, and I made it to full term for twins, but I had expected a little girl born in the summer that I would have with a midwife and a home birth, and now I had 2 little boys that were born in winter in an operating room at the hospital. It was a completely different, experience that I had to get my head around really quickly, along with the postpartum depression and the hormones and the expectations of it all. Mhm.
Well, and that's also very quick that you said that you got pregnant with your twins 2 months after the loss of your daughter.
I had them 20 days before the one-year anniversary of her loss.
Oh, wow. Oh gosh.
I think I did the math on all 4 of them, and I think I had 4 babies in 2.5 years. So there was a lot going on there.
Well, that's just, like, so much on your body, and like you were saying, like, hormonally for your body to have all the hormonal shifts like that.
Mhm,
I will say one thing that was maybe a little bit of a blessing in disguise for me is I had my miscarriages back to back, which was
mhm,
devastating. But then it took us like several months to get pregnant with my daughter. So
mhm.
I had like my body had a little bit of a break, and I was able to process those losses, and then I was still so unbelievably scared when I was pregnant with my daughter. Like, there were so
Yeah.
many things that I just wouldn't do, like, I told my mom, "If you buy clothes or something, that's fine. Do not give them to me. Like, they
Yes,
need to be
yes.
at your house." You know, like, I don't wanna see it. I don't like, I just wasn't ready I wasn't ready to, like, open my heart to that,
Mhm.
and it had already been I'm trying to think of the exact timing. I had my losses in October and December, and then I got pregnant with my daughter in June.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it was like 6 months. Um, and, like, having that time to process, I think, was helpful. And like I said, my body had a little bit of a break where, wow, that was, like, a lot happening in a very short amount of time for you. Like,
Mhm.
everything processing mentally and then your body physically.
Yeah, it was quite the experience, but I'm just so grateful that I got to have them. I think it was for the best that I had everybody so close together and that I managed to have all of them. I have certainly always been a person who tried to live life in the fast lane, and I think God blessed me with twins because he knew I could handle them, and that yeah.
And as maybe a way to slow down, like, when you have
Oh, yes, very much
3
so.
under 3, or did you say that you had 3 under 2 for a little bit?
Yes, yes, we did. I believe the boys were about 18 months or so when she came along.
Oh
Um,
my gosh. That's
yeah.
wild. That's a lot of babies.
It's a lot of babies, but I wouldn't change it for anything, and I'm just thankful, like, the Montessori thing was giving me a guide and a template that I could work off of. And as we discussed, my blog, Montessori with Multiples, is sort of a play on words because multiples being twins, but also knowing that I had a child before that who I wanted to acknowledge and that I partially blog about as well in my experiences going through that. And that I wanted at least another child afterwards. And I didn't know if that was going to be a singleton or twins, and so I wanted to acknowledge all of those experiences and write about all those experiences, and so that's how, Montessori with multiples, and I call myself a Montessori mom with multiples. I'm not the definitive mom, I'm just a mom trying to see how this works, sharing what works for me, some perspectives that other people and I would love people to read it and say, no, and I'll tell you why, or, oh, yes, I can totally relate to that. Whatever I'm jogging in your brain when you read this, I just want you to feel like this is somehow reflected in your experience.
And for those who are newer to the Montessori method, what are some highlights of how that education is different? And then I would love to hear how then you were able to implement that for multiples.
Sure. So I'll give a little bit of a history. So, history of Montessori comes from Maria Montessori, who was a doctor in Italy in the late 1800s. She worked in asylums, which was a general term for a facility where people with mental handicaps, physical handicaps, oddities even were sent. There wasn't a lot expected of them, and children would end up there too. Maybe they were too much for their parents to take care of. Maybe they didn't have parents. But this was also at a time where you were trying to be charitable and meet their basic needs. But their fate was pretty much written in stone and what was expected of them. And Maria Montessori started to observe these children and see the potential within them, and that was groundbreaking at the time. You were defined by your bloodline and your family, and so it was a real nature versus nurture, and she was looking at, "How can I change the environment? How can I change the food? How can I best set up these children for success and see the potential in these little children that they could be anything. They could be anybody, and we just have to bring that out in them." I thought that was wonderful, and I thought that was magical, and that is something that I wanted for my children to be anything that they potentially could be, and all I had to do was lay the groundwork to bring that out in them. And the nature versus nurture, when you have twins, which I wasn't expecting when I first looked it up, but on reflection, I have 2 little persons that were born at the same time who generally had the same experiences. Many twin moms out there will have twins that have the same DNA, and so you still have so many differences between them, even given all that, and the way that you can foster that in them, I thought was fascinating, and that's what I wanted for my children. Now, I said I had a loss when I had first started this. I was expecting a singleton, and everything I was reading was either about singletons or parents who then had children who were 2, 3 years apart, and they would talk about the differences. And I wasn't finding anything at all about twins. There might be a footnote here or there, but there wasn't
Mm.
really resources about that. And even when I tapped in to the resources I was using, and I would pose a question on a forum or on the Patreon-like services that I was paying for Montessori guides, they would shrug and they would say that, we have children that are sort of close in age. Maybe this might work for you and best of luck and a general thumbs up and holding their breath and hoping the best for me. And so I tried to make it work, and I wanted to see by diving into it what this would look like with twins and the differences and highlighting those differences and blogging about that and trying to reach out to other parents who might want to make this work for their family of twins, multiples, or multiple children with the twins and seeing how that's very different than singletons.
Well, and that's so helpful. I feel like this theme comes up a lot when talking to twin moms. A couple of podcast episodes ago, I had a mom talk about twin sleep and how there are not very many resources that are specific to that. There might be a footnote in a resource, but there's not twin specific guidelines. So the fact that you saw that that was lacking and then you were like,
Mhm.
well, I'm going to make blog posts about it so that moms with twins can do this. So that's
Mhm.
great.
Thank you. And as your first question was about how I fill my cup, it's also enjoyable for me. Even if there's only one person reading the blog, I don't know. I would still be doing this and wanting to feel like at least I'm getting my voice out there and hopefully somebody takes something away from it. The other thing was that I like about it. So there's three main components that you'll look at as the pillar of Montessori when it comes to Montessori parenting. And I should preface that I'm talking about Montessori parenting, which is very different than Montessori in the classroom and can't be replicated. Is the prepared adult, the prepared environment, and child-led and child-informed activity and interactions. So we look at the prepared adults and what our role is as the parent. So instead of being a dictator or a servant to the child, we are their guide and we are their facilitator in that. And so that kind of informs the role that we're supposed to play, that we are not doing for the child anything that they could do for themselves, but we're observing times when we might need to step in, we might need to restructure, we might need to inform or help or model for and self regulate with them to assist them with that. But generally, at whenever possible, as hands off as possible, independence is what we're really striving for with these children. And so, with the prepared environment, we're looking at okay, how can I set up this environment to foster that independence? How can I allow my child to perform as much of this? Self care. So, whether that's toileting, whether that's dressing themselves, whether that's getting their own food or putting away their food, setting the table, what can we do to empower them based on the furniture? Is the furniture child sized? The
Mm,
instruments that they're using, are they child sized? How all the steps that are involved with toileting, and how can we break down every one of those little steps and make it so that the child is be able to perform that as independently as possible. We also want the environment to be lacking overstimulation. So we don't want a bunch of clutter. And that's one of my first things that I would suggest to people is declutter your home, especially as a twin mom. Declutter as much as possible, a calmer, more structured environment. There's going to be chaos. We don't need to add to it. Difficulty finding things. There's going to be a lot of twin gear. I sent you a little video of that, I remember, of packing up. And if we can try to put that down so that they're not feeling overstimulated by it, you're not feeling overstimulated by it, that informs your modeling that you're calmer, which makes them calmer in a calmer environment. You're setting yourself up for success. And then finally, you observe the child because you may be working on yourself, you might be working on the environment, but it does nothing if you're not looking at how the child is interacting with you and the environment and what might need to be adapted to accommodate that. And then you have twins, so you have to see, okay, how are we going to make all three, all four of these things work so that I can be setting each one of those individual children up for success in the interactions that they will have with each other, as well as with me, as well as with
mm.
the environment.
so helpful, and so thank you for going over that, and I feel like how amazing for kids to be able to have that independence and also for you as the mom,
Oh, yes.
especially with twins. I feel like I didn't implement things like that with my daughter. Maybe I did it later than I would have, and with the boys, it was like, "Okay, you are old enough to walk, you can place your plate in the sink," things like that out of necessity, like, I don't have enough
Mhm.
hands, I need everyone to be a team player here and on board, so I love that.
And very much necessity informed because I also had very high strung children who want to do these things, and they wanted to do them faster than even I was ready for them to do. And taking that step back, those preconceived notions and biases and fears, and trying to set them up for success that they could do these. And part of the freedom, one of the things we say is freedom within limits. So it's not a free for all. I'm not laying in bed while my kids are 2 years old frying eggs for breakfast and making coffee. There are
Sure.
limits to what they are allowed to do, and we set up safe environments and yes environments, but we're trying to make it so that the child is well aware of what those limits are and the adult is well aware of what those limits are. Because if you're going to enforce boundaries and rules, you need to be informed of what your own boundaries are, what your own rules are, so that you're not giving inconsistent rules and expectations to your child. And you can have a little bit self reflection on, okay, what is informing my decision here? Is it because that's how you were raised? Is that how you
Mm.
expect because that's how other parents raise their children? Do you have biases of their capabilities? Do you have biases of fears of what could happen? And some self reflection with that. This is all three of these components are constantly moving, and you're constantly checking in with all three of them. There's a lot of opportunity for personal growth. And what I was doing when they were 9 months was different than 18 months, was different than 2 years, and then another child and 3 years now, and constantly adapting and saying, "Okay, this doesn't work anymore," or, "We need to change this," or, "I thought this would be good, but actually it's creating more friction than I was expecting." I was trying to eliminate some friction and trying to suss all that out.
Well, and I love earlier that you were talking about, like, decluttering your home and having, like, systems and organization. In a previous podcast episode, I had Genius Mom Hacks talk about kind of like one of her aha moments, and she was asking one of her kids, like, "Can you go grab a baby wipe or a diaper?" And they, like, didn't know
Mhm.
where it was. They're like, I don't know." Like, they couldn't find it, and she was like, "Oh, isn't it in the closet?" And they were like, "No." Like, they couldn't find something that should be, like, simple to find. Like, "Oh, that should be in the drawer by the bathroom," or, whatever it might be. So, I love
Mhm.
that there's so many practical tips as well.
And there's so much opportunity for learning with that. There's language development, letting
Mhm.
them know that this item is a baby wipe or, um, "Can you get me this to wipe their nose?" "No, that's used for the butt." And like, "No, this can also
Mhm.
be used for this and that," and expanding their knowledge of what the product is, what it's called, where it's located, how we dispose of it, and there's just so much opportunity for conversation there, and they will beam with pride at being able to help you. That's the most wonderful thing I think about Montessori and promoting independence is not even when they express it, but you can just see them glow. You can see that expression on their face. They don't even have to look to you for approval of what they did was right. They know that they did a good job, or they will just continue on like it's another Tuesday. And it's remarkable to see a 2.5-year-old acting like a teenager, that it's just, something that might not have been expected of or even allowed and made possible for a child of this age, and that we have a preconceived notion that this should be something that we should wait until they're older, that mommy will do.
Yes, I think that's so key, and I'm just, like, thinking back on my motherhood journey, and like I was mentioning earlier, I feel like there were a lot of things that I didn't do with Kaya because I'm not sure if I was thinking she wasn't capable, but I'm like, "Oh, I'll teach her that when she's older." It's like, "Oh, no, you should." Like, children are sponges and
Mhm.
can do a lot more than we give them credit for. So, I love that philosophy, and yeah, it's so true, and I feel like as you're talking, I just have implemented a lot more things with my boys really out of necessity, and I wish that I would have done those things with my daughter as well. And, implementing these philosophies with your son and then with your singleton, was it easier that time around having had your first practice with twins?
I think so. There were certainly things that were easier as far as modeling calmness. There is a lot of chaotic energy that's happening, and even as simple as baby-led weaning or providing forks for your child and then knives for your child to eat with at the table, and you're looking back and forth, and in the time it takes for your one head to swivel, all of a sudden this or that happens, and trying to
Sure.
model general calmness, making it an enjoyable experience, but a functional experience that, we will be playing later. And for the most part, we're going to be focusing on these tasks. And I found that so much easier with one child versus two. I found it was easier to know what to expect, be more reactive. You certainly learn to step back when there's twins because you cannot be bouncing back and forth or you're going to just exhaust yourself, that you have to almost position yourself triangularly and you have one at one side and one at the other to, if you had to go to one or the other, you're equal distance apart and step back and really allow them that freedom. And so I think I wouldn't have been a helicopter parent, but it had eliminated a lot of that from my system,
Hmm.
having twins and then having another singleton. I had seen what my boys were capable of. I had to allow them to be capable of more than maybe I would have thought, or out of necessity, allowing it to happen because I have only so many hands. So that was really a blessing to be thrown to the fire with this and just let's see if this method works. And reassuring to know that I had guide and principles in place that I could follow because twins are scary. Children, motherhood in general is scary, not having a guidebook, but to feel like these are principles that I expect will work and I have to trust the method and see how it goes. And to feel like I had that backing me was really powerful for me.
Yeah. And you were mentioning earlier that one of your ways that you fill your cup is blogging. So do
Mm.
you have a favorite blog post or like a favorite topic that you've written about?
Hmm. Let's see. I think I really like the 10 things I do with my toddlers every day because it just boiled down the simplicity of it all. And that's one of the things that Montessori highlights, that in the first 6 years, you're really not trying to fill your child with questions and quizzing, and you're just allowing them to be, just allowing them to absorb a lot of time at home, a lot of time in nature, not bouncing around from activity to activity or from lesson to lesson. Real foundation that you can, and the best leg up you can give your child in the world, and the greatest foundation you can set for your child is a good home life, a good loving life, supportive rhythm over
Mm,
routine. And I
mhm,
like that article because it just highlights the everyday things that we do, things like um, reading together and getting time outside and eating together and sitting at the table together and, going through the list are just pretty mundane things, but I have heard from other mothers, "So what do you do with an 8-month-old? What does your day look like?" And that there's this expectation that there needs to be more and that we should be achieving more. And sure, we'll acknowledge that it's the quiet moments that matter, but oftentimes those are a tagline on a social media post that we really don't resonate with because we feel like we're missing out and that we should be doing more. And that's a constant fear that parents have, and that it does take a lot of effort and restraint to slow down
mhm.
and to value that quiet, peaceful time that you have at home or that loud time that you have at home.
Yes, but I think that's a good point, like, busy isn't always better, and having those simple I like that you use the word rhythms. I was like, "Ooh, I love that." Like, I feel like I love having a schedule, but I feel like having 3 kids and especially having twins, we definitely have more of a rhythm now. Like,
Mhm.
if things don't go as planned, that's okay. Like, we're able to flow with it more and we don't have this rigid routine. And that sometimes those simple things, like you were mentioning, like reading, having meals together, like those are the moments where your children are really learning. And nothing's wrong with, like, having a scheduled gymnastics class or something,
No, of
but
course not.
where you're really getting those moments of learning are probably at home where you're sitting with your family. So,
Mhm.
yeah, that sounds like a great article, and I will link it in the show notes. Well, were there any other Montessori principles that we haven't talked about?
Sure. So, one of the interesting things that really resonated with me about Montessori was the concept of sharing. And in Montessori, sharing looks a little bit different, where instead of taking turns, as in you get 5 minutes and then somebody else gets 5 minutes, or that you're collaborating on something. And that's not to say that collaboration doesn't happen, but if a child is already focused on what they're doing, protecting that focus is so valued in Montessori that the child is absorbed in what they're doing. They're deeply concentrated in what they're doing. And so you don't want to take away from that simply because another child wants access to that material. So if one of my children is working on something, I might try to redirect the other child. Let's work. I see that so and so is already working with that.
Mhm.
Let's go do something else, redirect, because especially with twins, it can feel like everything is shared. And so I try to have items that are made for collaborative play, that are made for independent play. And there are a couple items where this is baby S's toy. This is baby B's toy so that they can have possessions of their own. If you think of adults, where if you're trying to get something done, say on the computer, okay, well, you have 10 minutes to type, and then so and so is going to have 10 minutes to type, and then you can go back to 10 minutes to type. It would be exhausting if you tried to get something done in the yard and you had to keep passing the clippers back so that you could get something done. If you've ever been in a situation where there's only one of something, only one's going to get something done. And that's very disruptive. That can derail what the child was trying to accomplish on their own. So, sharing generally looks like the child has access to the toys and material until they have concluded the activity. Now there has to be limits of, okay, it's been half an hour and we're moving on to the next activity, or it looks like you've completed it. With the exception of toys that are just for baby S and just for baby B, it's not like you can walk away and guard it like you might put your shirt down on a table and say, that's my table and I'm coming back to that. We don't look at it that way. But if you go on the playground, you'll have interactions with other parents and you have to navigate where one parent may be saying, oh, well, they also want to play with this. You need to give this child a turn. And I'll try to advocate for the way that I've chosen to raise my children, Montessori aligned with, well, your child was already playing with that, and my child is going to go do something else. Or if my child's already playing with something and another person comes in and asks if they can join, sometimes the answer will be no, and my children are still a little bit young for expressing that. Because they're twins, they're very excited to have somebody else join them, but there will be times where they will say no, and I want that to be respected, and that
Mhm.
they're
Sure.
and whenever I give my child a choice, I only give them choices where all answers within that freedom of limits is respected. So, for example, if I'm asking directly, would you like so and so to join you with the puzzle? If they say no, then that's their answer. And then there'll be other things. For example, you have to wear shoes. That's the limit. Would you like to wear your boots or your rain boots or your this colored sock or that colored sock? And then those are options where they have that freedom within limits. So that's another thing that's a little bit different. And when you're navigating the world with different parents and different parenting styles, that can be an interesting conversation that works differently.
I've had conversations with my husband about this. My daughter got this art kit for Christmas, and it was something in my head where I was like, "This is kind of an off limits thing for your brothers. This is like yours, and you need it." It was precious to her. So I'm like, "You can tell them this is mine, and this is something that I'm going to play with." And my husband was like, "Well, she should have to share her markers." And I'm like, "If you got a brand new bass for Christmas and you were playing your guitar for 10 minutes, and then I said, 'I want to turn,' would you be like, 'I just got this. Can I, like, play with it for a couple hours and then we'll talk about it tomorrow?'" Like, So it's interesting sometimes the standards that we have as adults and then
Mhm.
the standards that we put forth for our kids. It also really resonated with me when you were talking about how your boys share a lot of things and that you guys make an effort to have like some toys that are just for one son and some toys that are just for another. I'm like, oh man, I don't think we've ever done that. And I would like to. My boys are still very little too. They turned 3 in June and they have a lot of the same interests. Like they're very into similar toys. So how did you do that?
I was observing my children, and I saw that baby B was becoming disheartened at the idea that he just didn't seem to own something, that something was always up for grabs, even using that model of sharing, that there were things and he would express this to me that, "Well, I don't want them to have it, even if I don't have it. It is something that I still want to be mine," and I try to reflect on what would this look like for adults? What would this look like for me? And I think there's plenty of things that I share with my husband and things that are household items. But as a twin mom, as a mom of 3 living children, I am so overstimulated and everything is shared. And there are items that I just want to be my own as well that nobody touches, nobody interferes with, and that I can count on to be my own. And I imagine that children would feel the same. And I was seeing that in one of my sons. The other one is almost always happy to share everything and is just happy to have a playmate by their side. And sometimes we have to put up boundaries for parallel play, that not always having them play together, that they can play side by side and that's fine, or on opposite sides of the room and that's fine, because one is more of an introvert and one is more of an extrovert, that so far as I'm seeing. So it's fascinating to see these little differences. The left twin, baby S, is also left-handed, and
Hmm.
the other one is right-handed, and there's just so many little personality quirks that are coming in that we're adapting to.
And I just have, I guess, specific questions about this. So, did you allow him to pick out his own toy that was just for him, or did you purchase something that you thought he would enjoy and that was just his specific toy?
So we would see what they were playing with or behaviors that they were exhibiting. So, an interest in pouring or picking things apart or tearing or wanting to thread things or things that we could duplicate with a toy, with an activity. And so, looking at those behaviors that they were exhibiting and how can we get this very clear need that they're trying to express out. And so there were presents that we bought. I'm also very much a thrifter. So anything that I could find at the thrift store, it's worth just bringing home. It's 50 cents, a dollar, $2. And so I
Sure.
would take a crack at it. And then there were other things, especially around Christmas, where we would buy two just in case, and then a safe place to put the receipt in case we needed to return one, that it turned out that this would be an item that they could both enjoy or that only one gravitated towards it. So a lot of that comes back to observing the child, seeing where their interests lie, taking chances on things because they can't know necessarily that they have an interest in something until they're exposed to it. And
Mhm.
being prepared, though, for parental disappointment because we can get ourselves so excited, especially if you're someone who's on social media. The Montessori world online is full of graphics of you got to get this child this latest thing that's going to harness this, that, and the other skill and that they're going to love. And then you present it, and it is not something that they're interested in at this time or maybe ever. And so letting that expectation and that disappointment go and being more flexible with what you bring into the house and what might have to go. And toy rotation is a component of that, to answer your question in the most broadest sense, because every child is going to be different. And it is a game of challenges and wins when something works as expected, and then surprises when it's something you didn't expect to be such a hot item that the child is fascinated with.
Well, I appreciate that insight because as we're talking and I'm reflecting on like my children's toys and stuff. Really, my daughter has a lot of her own toys that I would say, "Oh, that is like a Kaya specific toy." And is that because of her age? Because she's older and she's 6? She is very into arts and crafts. And like I mentioned earlier with the markers, we have communal markers that everyone can use. And then she has these special markers that are just for her. And I want to make sure that I am nurturing my boys' individual interests. And I think what's hard right now from our observation is a lot of those interests are the same. But this conversation is opening my eye to make sure that I'm observing that if I notice different interests, that we will make sure that that is addressed and that they have like a certain special toy that is just theirs.
Mhm.
So I'm going to be thinking about that. I'm going to be reflecting on that because yeah, that's definitely sticking with me, so thank you.
No problem, and that might develop later. One of the things that I had done very early on and that I'm super proud of is their capsule wardrobe. So I set up their closet to have very simple. You just have a tension rod and that all the clothes hung on. And then there's little pants that are in a basket below that with underwear. And every item within that, all tops match all pants, and everything can go together. And so the children can select clothes that work for them. And I rotate that based on the season. So they will never pick a seasonally inappropriate item. But in that, they have started to say that that is their preferred shirt or that is their preferred pants or even their preferred socks. And so I take a mental note of one that's really passionate about that item. And so I will say, well, that's baby B's shirt. We have other ones that are of the same color, or you really like this other shirt. And so also protecting that with their clothing. Because right now they do share a wardrobe, and maybe as they get older, almost certainly they're going to divide their interests. But there's, again, an element of all of it's shared, but then some items are being segmented. And I will ask their permission. I will say, is it okay if baby S wears this top today? And if he says no, he says no, even if he's not wearing it because that's his shirt and one he's really gravitated towards.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So my boys share a room and a closet, so we have a similar setup where it's like, this is the boys' clothes, but I will say specifically the past 2 weeks, they both have been having clothing preferences, and it's so cool to see. I would say that I dress them similarly 30 to 40% of the time. Like, if we're going out to a park, I'm like, "Everyone's wearing red," because it's easy for me to
I've
see
done that.
everybody.
I've done that. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes, like, I see a shirt and it's cute, and I will buy 2, and sometimes we are gifted matching clothes. So, I'm not opposed to matching clothes, but I'm not also like, every single outfit has to be matching, and
Complimentary is where I go.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I love that too, and it's been so fun to see them pick out their own clothes. Like, yesterday my son Wyatt really wanted to wear palm trees, and my other
Mhm.
son really wanted to wear a shirt with cactus on it. So I'm like, "Okay." It was just, like, fun to see because I haven't now that they're getting older and their personalities are coming out, it's fun to see that and then to, of course, be respectful of it, like you're saying. So, that's just, like, fun to be seeing, and I've loved all the information that you've given us, and I feel like you did a really great job of also weaving in practical tips that people can implement.
Well, I hope so because it's your life, and just because it's written on a blog or somebody has a influencer following and they're telling you that this is the way you should be, or even the books that are written that tell you this is the way it should be. Everybody comes with different experiences. You may be a family of 6 who happens to have twins or multiple twins. You may be a single mom, you may be living in an apartment, or you might be living in a house, and your environment is going to be very different. Your cultural influences are going to be very different, and how that may some components of Montessori might resonate with you, or it might be at odds with your cultural background, and trying to weave that all together under the umbrella of being a twin mom. It's not a one size fits all, but I think it's a good framework and some good pillars that can help you adapt your parenting style.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like you've given lots of advice, but is there a certain piece of advice, or if you could have a heart to heart with a twin mom, is there anything that you would tell her?
Sure. And we've talked about through this, loss is going to inform my experiences, and being a twin mom is going to enforce my experiences. And I think the most powerful thing I can say to any twin mom or lost mom is you absolutely have to embrace your reality as it is. Your life has fundamentally changed, and it is going to touch every aspect of your life. And the hardest leap you can do is embracing that, but it is the most important one that you can do because if you're still clinging to what life was, you are setting yourself up for friction.
Mm.
You need to see how this has informed the changes in your marriage and how you parent, maybe your free time, how you fill your cup. And that doesn't mean that the experience is lesser by any means. It just means that it is very different. And you might create a lesser experience by expecting it to be the way it was. And so
Mm. Mm.
expecting that it is different, embracing that it is different, it's okay to mourn the differences because
Mhm.
nostalgia is a thing, and we want almost all of us wanna go back to our childhood or the rose-colored portions of our childhood and want our life to be as it was, and so if you're able to adapt to that, and part of that is, Montessori informed, the prepared adult, the accepting the constant flow of change. Your children are gonna grow up faster than expected, and making sure that that is a constant source of growth for you, I think is the best thing that a twin mom can do.
Hmm. I love that, and it's so true. Yeah, absolutely, that's really great. Well, Tabitha, thank you so much. It was such a fun and interesting conversation, and I appreciate you taking time out of your busy twin mom life to come chat with me.
I feel very blessed to have you, and, I can't wait for our conversation on my podcast.
Yay! Okay. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy twin mom life to listen along. I hope this podcast shed some light on a topic that's been on your heart and gave you more confidence as a twin mama. If you know a twin mom, please send this her way. If you like what you heard today, please subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. Check out the show notes to be connected with today's guest and get discount codes for brands I love. See you next Thursday. Until then, you were made for this.